Welcome back to Record Live. It is actually, Zanita, hard to believe that a quarter of the year has passed us already. We haven't had a chance to do one of these programs yet this year, which is a shame. But it's good to be back in the co-host seat, and it's great to have a special guest, Pastor Glenn Townend. Thanks for joining us, Glenn.
Hey, thank you for welcoming me, both Jared and Zanita.
Now, Zanita, it has been a while. I want to let our audience know something interesting or exciting that's happened. We actually launched our Living Covenant book just a couple of weeks ago. And Zanita's actually been working on a sort of supplementary podcast to this one, which interviews a lot of the authors, a lot of the young people who contributed to this book, about the characters, goes in depth more than what you'll get, some of the behind the scenes stories that aren't included in the book. And so that's an exciting project that Zanita's working on. And so we just wanted to flag that. That will be coming out soon. We don't have an exact date, but stay tuned and we'll let you know. Next week, we're going to have a conversation, Zanita and I, about some of the moves you may have seen or read or heard about, some of the changes that are happening in my world, in my career coming up. And we talk a little bit about that story and how God's been involved in that journey for me. But today with Pastor Glenn, we're going to talk about mission. I think that could be the theme word of the day, the main idea. And Pastor Glenn, it's been a little while since we've spoken to you. I think probably at GC session mid last year was the last time we had a bit of a chat. And this was on the radar, this sort of strategic plan for the division for this 5-year period. But can you just tell us a little bit about what is South Pacific for Christ, and how is that going to look rolling out across the next few years?
Sure. Happy to do that. Well, you will remember back in 2024, we had Papua New Guinea for Christ. And what happened there was Papua New Guinea opened up to have people come and preach for 2 weeks in April, May of 2024, and those people came from all over the world, but most of them came from the rest of our division. So Australia, New Zealand, Samoa and Fiji and Tonga and Solomon Islands, and we all went to Papua New Guinea. And what God did there was just amazing. It was kind of a Pentecost experience again. And so we had all of the union presidents, a lot of our division leaders, a lot of conference mission presidents there, and they came back, as well as lay people and pastors, really excited about what God could do. And that they said, we got to do this elsewhere. We got to do this and take this to the rest of the division. And that was kind of unanimous of all those who experienced it, because they said, we want people to experience what we experienced with PNG for Christ. And I've just come back from Papua New Guinea this week. And yeah, look, I met people who were baptized during PNG for Christ. I've met people who went to PNG for Christ, but got baptized after. And they're witnessing and whatever. So there's a momentum and movement happening, and people are saying we want to see that across our division. So that's when we had a strategic planning in Fiji in the September of that year, and out of that came this whole strategy of South Pacific for Christ, which is our main focus, because we're really kind of a diverse culturally, but we're really united with mission. And so we divided up the quinquennium with the different union focuses. So this year, we're all going to the 11 countries of the Trans-Pacific. And so I'm personally going to the Solomon Islands, and they're doing programs in July and August. Fiji is in August, and the other 11 countries. And we've got, I've just come from a meeting where there was 300, and I don't remember the exact number, of preachers coming from Australia and New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, largely, and going to these 11 countries in July and August. And then the next year is New Zealand Pacific, and the year after that is Australia for Christ, 2028. And then the year 2029 is back to Papua New Guinea, and 2030 is to our partner division, and we're going to Indonesia and Thailand and Vietnam and Malaysia. So that's it in a nutshell. It's taking evangelists and people who are willing to preach after people have done a whole lot of background work, and getting them to experience what God's doing in another culture.
Awesome. I think a lot of people are still hearing some of the stories and the blessings that came from P&G for Christ a few years ago. And that was such a massive event. I think that blew everyone's minds. So hearing that it's going to take place again this year, not just in one country, but, in 11, is kind of crazy. It makes me think, how is this actually going to happen and not just be chaotic? Like, how do we have enough people kind of going over to these things and supporting this event?
Look, we have, from the meeting that I just came out of, we have 28 vacancies. So if there's somebody who would like to go to preach in one of the countries of the Trans-Pacific in July or August, and the different countries that are at different times, we've got 27, it might have been 28, I think it was 28 opportunities still. And yeah, the local people, they are really focused. So like at the moment, they're doing a lot of health work with 10,000 Toes and community health initiatives. They're doing a lot of community service, feeding programs, supporting people with all kinds of, challenges. They're doing small groups. They're doing a whole lot of prayer. And in fact, they're going to do 100 days of prayer from April 27 through till the start of the program in the Solomon Islands, July 4. So they're doing Bible studies. There's a lot of work happening in all of these countries right now. And we come along and we will be a part of the harvest. So they're working through, preparing the soil, sowing the seed, and looking after the people. And then we come in and harvest, and then they will do the the ongoing multiplying work. And look, what we've seen in P&G, some places we've had some challenges since, but in most places it's just been an ongoing thing. And as I said, I came back this week and I'm thinking, wow, if we can see this happen all over the division, it's going to be amazing.
Some people listening to you, Glenn, might have a couple of things they're thinking, oh, but I'm not a preacher. Like, I can't be involved. This sounds like, that sort of big public evangelism. Does it still work? Is it worth doing? Can I contribute to that because I'm not a preacher? Like, what would you say to some of those maybe questions or objections that people might have?
Yeah, look, there are 100 and of the 300 and something people, there's nearly 150 who are lay people who are going to preach. And that's from all of the countries around, the rest of the division. So there are people who are out there having a go. Look, I'm taking a team. My wife, my nephew, we'd happily have some other people come, and you can come and help with in support. Can help out in health. You can help out in logistics. If you want to be involved, just find out from your local conference or mission who's going and see if you can join a team.
So there are
There's an-
non-preaching jobs, is what you're saying. There's things
yeah.
that still need doing that you don't have to get up and be in the spotlight.
No, that's right. And you can help, with the visitation and, working with the people and setting up and pulling down and, equipment and all of that kind of thing.
Sounds like there's not a shortage of things to be done there.
Not at all.
Awesome. Well, there is also an event coming up next month in Brisbane. And can you tell us a bit about that? How closely, I guess, connected is this event to what's happening in the islands? Is it kind of like an event to train us for that, or is this another separate event?
The answer is yes. So this is the launch for the South Pacific for Christ whole initiative and strategy. And so, yes, there will be opportunities for training and development for those who are going out to the nations of the Trans-Pacific later in July, August. But there will also be a lot of training and development for those who will be involved in New Zealand Pacific and Australia, for Christ, and, Papua New Guinea. This event is different from any other event that we've had. Yes, there will be training. We've got Pastor Urton Kohler, the General Conference President, coming. He's going to do the main meetings at night. We've got all the Global Mission Centre leaders. And so how do you reach Muslims? How do you reach Hindus? How do you impact the post-secular, modern, post-Christian people? So we've got all of those people coming, and so that will be happening. But the whole thing is bathed in prayer. The whole thing is that we're spending the time in prayer, seeking God and saying, God, renew us, change us, fill us, empower us, because we want to see our nations changed for Jesus. Now, just one other, little thing. The major focus text that we've been using is Psalm 2 and verse 8. Now, Psalm 2 is a messianic psalm. It's about God saying, you people are in the nations, you think you're running the world, but I've got my son who's going to come back and rule this world again. And he asks us in verse 8, he says, ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession. And so he's saying, people, ask for Jesus to be the king again of the nations. And so every day I am praying Psalm 2 and verse 8 for the 11 nations of the Trans-Pacific, and I mention them by name, and I'm sharing that wherever I go. And there's lots of people who are joining. And so the South Pacific for Christ is, we got these great international speakers and great training, but it's going to be prayer soaked. And the prayer team's already praying on a regular basis. They're looking at how every meeting that we have will be prayer oriented. And so, for me, I'm excited. And the main text will be Psalm 2, verse 8.
What I heard from PNG for Christ was that it was prayer bathed. There was fasting and prayer going on in advance, because it was a 2020, I think, program initially, and then COVID struck. It got delayed, and it happened at 2024.
That's right.
It was
8 years. It was 2016 that we worked with the General Conference to have PNG for Christ. And so we thought it was going to be 2020, COVID. What you're saying is true. And so they prayed for 8 years, but probably for the last few years, they really fasted and prayed.
So what I appreciated about the program and what I heard from the people there was that this preparation, the fact that so much prayer and things had gone in was a big part of the success. Not only that, but there was nurturing and programs to work with people, to serve people, to heal people and help people in the lead up to. Now, I guess my question for the four of them so tightly together, will there be time for all the prep work and the prayer and all that stuff? And you know, if that was such a big part of the success of PNG for Christ, like, is some of that happening still and again? And you've kind of answered that. You've said, yes, we're doing some prayer things in advance of that. But what does that look like, that preparation, and what will it look like across the next few years?
Yeah, and that's why the launch in Brisbane from April 28th to May 2. And by the way, and we may talk about it a little later, but there's still vacancies available for people to actually come to that event. But yeah, look, I mentioned the Trans-Pacific calling for 100 days of prayer from April 27 to July 4, and their first program is July 5. I with all the church leadership, wherever I am, we're calling people to prayer and also to fasting. And there are some people fasting and joining me fasting for Trans-Pacific for Christ in the office here, and I meet them on meetings around the place. And yeah, so the focus at this year is Trans-Pacific, but we'll shift that to New Zealand Pacific and to Australia. And we think that we'll just create we're hoping to create this disciple-making movement, you know, to be really happening, that people will just keep the prayers going and keep changing and focusing. But, you know, I was in a town in out of Port Moresby, Kerema, Gulf Province, on Sabbath, and I said, will you people pray for the Trans-Pacific? Yes, and everyone stuck their hand up, and, you know, there were hundreds of people there. And so I know when people make that kind of commitment in places like that, where they've seen God work powerfully, they will do it. And so I think that this momentum of prayer will take off.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who would love to get involved in opportunities like the ones in the Pacific Islands and even the ones in Brisbane. I know petrol prices are ridiculous at the moment, so there's a lot of people who are probably turned off the event just for that. But for people who do want to partake just by praying, what can they be intentional about specifically praying for? Like, what are some of those specific prayer points that we can keep in mind?
Well, you know, there's a lot of community service happening right now in the Trans-Pacific, a lot of 10,000 Toes, health initiatives. There's a lot of Bible studies, small groups. And so, you know, we can be praying for them, pray for the events in July and August, and then the preparation event, you know, happening in Brisbane. They would be some of the real focuses at the moment. And look, who knows what's going to happen? Will the war in the Middle East continue? Will we run out of fuel? It could create chaos. We may not be able to get there, but hey, God knows what's going to happen, and he'll have us prepared and focused to make it all happen. And so we've talked about contingency plans because of all of this. And yes, some people who were coming to the launch in Brisbane have said, oh, we can't because it's a bit expensive, because of, you know, what's happening with fuel prices. Look, that's fine. God will have who he needs there, and it gives other people opportunity to come if they would like to come. And if we can't make it to, the Solomon Islands, we'll do something on Zoom or, So, we've got to be prepared because the signs of the times are happening. Jesus is coming. Our preaching of the gospel and sharing of Jesus' message will go out, and the enemy won't stop us. COVID didn't stop us. This energy crisis won't stop us either. It will happen. So just pray that God's message goes out despite the obstacles that come up.
I think that there might be some people that are like, yes, this is great, sounds good, works in PNG, it's going to be great for TPUM. But when we come to Australia or New Zealand, is it really going to work? Public evangelism, does it still work? How do you think we can use this program to maybe re-engage some of those people who might be cynical about the event, or even to, does it need to be a different methodology when we get to those years, or can we do something the same as we've done in those countries, but with prayer that will tip it over the line? Like, do you have any thoughts on what that might look like?
Yeah, look, I do. A couple of things. The General Conference has asked the World Church to focus on Jesus for 2027. And the only date that we are certain of Jesus' life is his baptism. And you look at the rulers that were in place in Luke chapter 3, that was AD 27. And what was the big event? Jesus was baptized. So before that, Jesus was a builder, carpenter, but he revealed himself as the Messiah. And God, we know what happened. The Holy Spirit came down as a dove. God himself said, "You are my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." That had been prophesied in Daniel chapter 9 of when the Messiah would come. It's been 2,000 years since 27 AD, in 2027, and the General Conference has asked the whole of the church to focus on Jesus, reading the Gospels, the desire of ages, for 2027. And then the signs of the times will be focusing on Jesus. Record will focus on Jesus. Our glow tracks will focus on Jesus. All of our literature will focus on Jesus. Our podcasts, our posts, our social media, all of Jesus. And as I've talked this concept around, and by the way, and we'll be launching the One Voice in this Jesus Focus at the South Pacific for Christ event in Brisbane, and Pastor Nkola will join myself and Pastor Maveni Kalfanonga to do that. There's a momentum, as we've talked about it, to certain groups. They're saying, hey, we can do a whole lot of podcasts on Jesus. We can do a whole lot of posts on social media about what Jesus has done and who he is and whatever. And we can, share this whole momentum. And people are interested in Jesus and spirituality. And so we can say, hey, do you want to learn more about Jesus? And we will start giving people options. How do you want to learn about Jesus? And I believe that we will discover that people will want to do some stuff online, but eventually they'll want to come to a group, and they will want to come to a Bible study group, a small group. They'll want to come to a seminar or a program. And I think we will offer all of those options. And I believe that we will find that people will take, different people will take all of those different options. And I think as a church, I know in Australia and New Zealand, the leadership are working on right now, creating all of those different options for 2027 and 2028. And I'm excited by what those options will be. Some of them will be online, some of them will be digital, some of them will be face to face, and we'll give people the opportunity to try different events to learn more about Jesus.
Great. I love that. One thing I love about the Adventist Church is that we are so united in our vision and our goals across the world. But I think touching on that, like you mentioned, well, in I guess the advertisement for the event in a month's time, the focus for the 5 years is mission. And you just mentioned that next year, or I think in 2027, the focus is Jesus. So why is it important that we have, I guess, like a united focus like this? Because I feel like there's probably a lot of people who are like, oh, I don't need to go to that event. I feel like God has called me to this or to that. And they feel, I guess, pulled to different things.
Hey, look, I believe the Holy Spirit will guide the church and will guide individuals. And I have not seen the unity at the General Conference like I had when Pastor Urton Kohler talked about all together with one voice and a loud voice, quoting Revelation, that the gospel will go out with a loud voice and we'll all speak with one voice. I believe when people hear it, they will jump on board. But some people will say, for me, I want to do prophecy seminars because Jesus was the one prophesied to be the Messiah. Whereas other people will say, hey, I want to focus and do a preaching series on the Gospels. And people say, well, I want to do a health thing. Well, Jesus was into health and healing. And so I think it all can kind of fit in if we're being led by the Spirit. And I think the diversity of the gifts and the focus, there will always be a few people who'll be a little independent, I'm sure. I see that all the time, but I think the majority of the people will say, hey, I'll use what I've got and we'll focus on Jesus for the year.
It's very good. Glenn, I know you're very busy and I appreciate you taking this time to speak with us today. We're going to put the link up. Actually, I'll do that now. southpacificforchrist.org is the place where you can get details on not only the launch event, but updates across all the 5 years. I believe they'll keep that website updated with the latest information on what's happening, who's doing things where.
Jared, just on that, for example, the Trans-Pacific call for prayer is up on that website.
Yes.
And there's a number of things there, but we'd love people to come to the launch if they'd like to. All the information is there. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's closing soon, and if they want to have a look and check that out and register, I'd encourage them to do it as soon as they can if they listen to this or watch this. But just as we're finishing, Glenn, we like to end practically on Record Live, sort of our thing. What can people do in the next few years? What do you think will help an Adventist person to feel connected to the mission, to be a disciple-making disciple? I've heard you say that so many times. It's sort of your catch cry. Your vision for our church is for us to be disciple-making disciples. What can we do personally, practically in our day-to-day lives to be the sort of person that is a disciple-making disciple?
Yeah, look, for me, I pray for my neighbours. I look for opportunities to talk with them. I cycle with the people I cycle with, opportunities to talk and listen with them, and just yeah, be involved with people. I mean, I know somebody who goes down and has a hot drink every morning at a local cafe, has made a lot of friends there, and is able to talk to them about different work things and about God. And yeah, so like these things come up. Just talk, ask Jesus, give me opportunities to grow me and my faith in what I'm doing right now.
Start where you are. I think that's a good place to go. Well, thank you again, Glenn, for jumping on. For anyone interested, you can find the details to the event in Brisbane next month in our comments. And yeah, hopefully we will see some of you there. Thank you, Glenn, again.
Hey, thank you. And the other big thing is just please, if all of us can keep praying for what God could do in these next 5 years, it could be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's right. We'd love to see what happened in Papua New Guinea spread across the whole division, and for people to really find Jesus, especially in our communities. There's a lot of hopelessness and fear and worry at the moment, and Jesus can answer a lot of those questions that people have. So we will pray for that. Thank you, Glenn, for your time, and for everyone watching, listening at any point. May God bless you, and keep praying, as Glenn said, for these events that are coming up. God bless.